Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're unpacking a really thrilling and honestly pretty terrifying medical mystery that absolutely shocked the United States back in the day. We're heading back to 1993 to look at a sudden outbreak that completely baffled some of the greatest medical minds, forced us to rethink how diseases actually spread, and proved just how deeply interconnected human health is with the environment around us. It's a wild ride, so let's get right into it. Picture this. It's May 1993 down in the American Southwest. We're talking specifically about the Four Corners region, right where New Mexico, Arizona, Colorado, and Utah all meet. Out of nowhere, a 19-year-old Navajo youth, a guy who was a perfectly healthy, long-distance runner, suddenly falls ill. And at first, it just seems like a normal flu, right? Fever, some muscle aches, but within a matter of days, he's literally gasping for air, his lungs rapidly fill with fluid, and tragically he dies from unexplained respiratory failure. And then the plot thickens. Doctors realize his fiancée had passed away from the exact same mysterious symptoms just days before. Medical professionals were totally stunned. What on earth was suddenly killing the healthy youth of the Four Corners? Okay, let's dive into this staggering figure. As word started to spread, health officials quickly realized this wasn't just some isolated freak tragedy. There were other cases popping up across the whole region, all with the exact same terrifying progression. Out of the initial 33 identified cases in the area, 17 people died. Think about that for a second. That is a mortality rate of over 50%. For a completely mysterious, lightning-fast respiratory illness that's striking down totally healthy young adults, a 50% death rate is absolute nightmare fuel. The CDC knew they had to act, and they had to act fast. Which brings us to the investigation, the frantic, high-stakes hunt to find this invisible killer in the Four Corners. So, to find this thing, the CDC and local health departments essentially launched an all-out epidemiological detective mission. When you're dealing with a rapidly fatal, totally unidentified illness, you kind of have to cast a really wide net. Investigators initially suspected basically everything. Was it some new, super severe strain of the flu? Well, lab tests came back and said, nope. Okay, how about a fast-acting bacterial infection? No again. They even looked into environmental toxins. And given how sudden and severe it was, they actually had to consider the terrifying possibility of biological weapons. But rapid laboratory testing quickly eliminated all of those possibilities. The culprit just wasn't any of the usual suspects. The massive breakthrough finally came when investigators started looking super closely at the patients' environments. They realized all the victims had a shared link to rural settings. They were often doing everyday chores, like cleaning out dusty sheds or old cabins, and testing eventually revealed a brand new strain of an old pathogen, a hantavirus. It's a microscopic virus, and its primary carrier out there in the American Southwest, the humble deer mouse. This was huge because it meant the victims hadn't caught it from each other at all. They had actually caught it directly from their environment. This specific, newly discovered strain was eventually named the sin nombre virus, which translates from Spanish to without name. Now, you might be wondering, why such a mysterious title? Well, initially, researchers tried to name it the Four Corners virus or the Muerto Canyon virus, basically just naming it after the local geography. But local Navajo communities and residents rightfully protested that. Naming a deadly, terrifying virus after their home would cause immense regional stigma and really hurt the community. Respecting this, the CDC officially went with sin nombre, leaving the virus forever without a name. Now, what's really interesting about this next part is that this wasn't humanity's first rodeo with this kind of virus. It was an old enemy presenting a totally new threat. While the sin nombre strain was brand spanking new to science in 1993, our battle with hantaviruses actually goes back a lot further. Let's trace the trail here. The medical community first took serious notice of this virus family way back in the 1950s during the Korean War. Roughly 3,200 United Nations soldiers were struck down by this strange illness they called Korean hemorrhagic fever. And for decades, nobody had a clue what caused it. Then, jump forward to 1976. A brilliant South Korean scientist named Dr. Ho Wang Lee makes a massive breakthrough. He actually isolated the virus in the lungs of striped field mice near the Hantan River, which, by the way, is exactly how the entire Hantavirus family got its name. So when the sin nombre strain popped up in the US in '93, scientists quickly realized this family of rodent-borne viruses was actually a global naturally occurring threat. But here's where we get a massive biological twist. The old world hantaviruses found in Asia and Europe, like the one from the Korean War, primarily caused hemorrhagic fever with renal syndrome. Essentially, it violently attacked the host's kidneys. But the New World hantaviruses found in the Americas, like our Nombre strain, they did something entirely different. They caused hantavirus pulmonary syndrome. So instead of going after the kidneys, this American adaptation aggressively attacked the lungs, causing them to just rapidly fill up with fluid. It was the exact same viral family, but with a totally different, highly lethal method of attack. Which leads us to ask, what set it off? That brings us to the climate trigger. And this brilliantly illustrates the real why behind the mystery. If the deer mouse and the Sin Nombre virus had always been hanging around the American Southwest, why on earth did it suddenly emerge with such terrifying ferocity in the spring of 1993? Well, it was a massive ecological chain reaction. Back in 1992 and 1993, a really strong El Niño weather pattern brought unusually heavy rainfall to the typically arid, dry Southwest. All that extra water caused an absolute boom in desert vegetation, particularly piñon nuts. With this sudden, massive buffet of food available, the deer mouse population literally exploded. More mice meant more of the virus being shed into the environment, which drastically increased the chances of everyday people coming into contact with virus-laden mouse droppings. It was, quite literally, a perfect climate-driven storm. And the way you catch it? That's what makes it so incredibly insidious. The invisible threat of hantavirus is that you don't even need to get bitten by a mouse to get deathly ill. The virus is shed in the rodent's urine, their feces, and their saliva. When those droppings dry out, the viral particles become aerosolized. They float in the air. That means simply walking into a closed-up, infested cabin and sweeping the floor with a broom can kick up all this contaminated dust. You just breathe it in, and boom, the virus enters your lungs. It is completely invisible to the naked eye. So, let's move to and see how this builds into something actionable, how we can actually protect ourselves today. Because this virus is just a permanent part of the natural environment, we really have to know how to live safely alongside it. The CDC's advice for preventing hantavirus infection is incredibly specific and absolutely vital. Rule number 1, never, ever sweep or vacuum rodent droppings dry. Doing that is exactly how you create those deadly viral aerosols we just talked about. Instead, you've got to use wet cleaning methods. Spray the infested area down thoroughly with a strong disinfectant or a heavy bleach solution, let it really soak in to kill the virus and weigh down the dust, and then carefully wipe it up. You should always wear masks and gloves during cleanup. And of course, your absolute best defense is just sealing up any holes or gaps in your home or cabin to keep the rodents out in the first place. All of this brings us to a pretty powerful realization. The 1993 outbreak perfectly encapsulates what experts call the One Health concept. It's this fundamental understanding that human health is completely, totally inseparable from the wildlife and the climate around us. Think about it. The tragedy in the Four Corners wasn't caused by some lab leak or a foreign attack. It was literally caused by rainfall, pine nuts, and mice. Our physical well-being is heavily dictated by the delicate and sometimes very volatile balance of the natural ecology that we live right in the middle of. So I want to leave you all with this provocative thought. The Sin Nombre virus was quietly hiding out in the deer mouse population for who knows how long, just waiting for an El Niño rainstorm so it can multiply and spill over into humans. As climate change continues to accelerate these extreme weather events, completely altering habitats and shifting animal migrations, what other dormant viruses might be out there, just waiting for the exact right ecological conditions to finally emerge? It's a fascinating and, frankly, sobering thought to chew on. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Stay curious, stay safe out there, and I will catch you in the next one.